This episode of the Catalyst Podcast is brought to you by Medi-Share. Did you know that one of the most common stressors keeping people up at night is very rarely talked about in the church? In fact, 66% of Americans across all income levels say it's a significant financial stressor. So what's causing this stress? It's healthcare. And if you're one of these people being kept up at night deciding what to do, there is a way to ease your burden. There is a better way for you to take care of your family than the traditional healthcare industry has to offer. Medi-Share is an affordable alternative to traditional healthcare and the most trusted name in healthcare sharing. Medi-Share has over 400,000 members who share on average $50 million in medical bills a month. The typical family saves 50%, which equates to about $500 or more per month on their healthcare costs when they switch from traditional insurance. So we know our Catalyst audience. We know so many of you out there are working in the gig economy, working in small ministries, small churches, and traditional insurance just doesn't make sense to you. So that's why we're so happy to partner with Medi-Share. And listen to this. They also offer unlimited access to telehealth and virtual counseling sessions for free. That's right, virtual counseling for free. It's time for you to get some peace of mind and get the reliable, affordable health care that you need. To learn more about Medi-Share and how you can start saving hundreds of dollars per month, you need to go right now and check out medishare.com/catalyst. That's MEDISHARE.com/catalyst. It literally takes 2 minutes to see how much you could save. Again, medishare.com/catalyst. And now on to this week's episode.
You're listening to the Catalyst Podcast.
You got to build an incredible team that demands excellence.
God's looking for a generation of leaders. God is calling us to be leaders who are fearless.
It is humility plus will. That is where the essence of the leadership begins.
Leadership is stewardship. It is temporary, and you're accountable.
Welcome back to the Catalyst Podcast for the week after the 4th of July, or I guess we're still the week of 4th of July, technically, since the 4th was on Sunday. I didn't give the actual date there. I'm moving it around and changing things up a little bit at a time. We'll change. But Brad, you get involved.
I feel like you came in kind of, you're flying in, trying to land the plane there with some turbulence.
I was. When you try something new, sometimes it's a little rough at the beginning.
You never know how it's going to go.
Yeah, you never know how it's going to go. Did you get involved in any fireworks or anything?
A little bit, just watching, not necessarily. Yeah, there you go. Very, very light.
Yeah.
4th of July light.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. It's amazing what you can now, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, but I didn't purchase any fireworks and I didn't go on any journeys to get any, but what is available to the general public now is actually pretty impressive. We did have a little I was involved in a little cul-de-sac kind of firework thing, and one of my buddies did go pretty all out, and the stuff that you can just buy is I was impressed. I like fireworks, so it's good to just I feel like I keep saying this, and I'll keep saying it because it is this idea of getting back to the things, not getting back to normal, but getting back to the things that we appreciate. And I find myself, I don't know about you, but these things that used to be things that I wouldn't think twice about. I had fun doing them, but wouldn't think twice about. Now they have a little more meaning. I just kind of recognize, this is fun, and I appreciate it. So,
all right,
yeah. So,
well, happy birthday, America!
Yeah, happy birthday, America. I feel like I can't not just mention quickly that Max Verstappen got another win.
Listen, he's on a roll.
Yeah.
He is on a roll, and Mercedes is struggling.
Yeah,
so.
they are struggling. We're gonna do our best here to get the Catalyst audience into F1. Yeah.
Well, while you're at it, watch the Tour de France.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll be honest. I have not been plugged into the Tour de France at all this year, but I have in the past. It's another one of those things that, like, once you get in, you get hooked.
You get sucked into the teams and the strategy, and it's just it's arguably one of the most grueling sporting events in all the world.
Yeah,
to bike that many miles and to bike that kind of terrain. I mean, those dudes are doing 55, 60 miles an hour going down those hills.
It's insane.
Yeah, and if you crash some of those hills, you go off the side and you're toast.
Yeah, well, or if some guy runs out in front of you with a sign.
Well, exactly.
That's the one part that I did see. We basically had a 55 car pile up because a guy ran out with a sign. But
yeah, one of these days I'm going to do a British Open because it's coming up here in a couple weeks. Wimbledon, Tour de France, and throw in an F1 just to make it a quadruple. Well,
I mean, you're right. F1 is it's 2 weeks, I think, but Silverstone. So
exactly.
Yeah,
it's all British Open. Now you got to go to France to see the Tour de France, but you come in early for that, and then you got to come in a little early for Wimbledon, but then you get the British Open and F1. I mean, that's a pretty good sporting trip right there.
That would be pretty epic. And maybe you can get NT to join you for the British Open part. Yeah,
we'll have him we'll have NT for tea.
Yeah,
on one of the afternoons.
Yeah, no, that would be an epic trip. I do think there's something too, and you and I are wired similarly in the fact that just like intricacy, strategy, the way things work, but there's a through line of something like Formula One and like the Tour de France, where it is, you see it on the surface and it just looks like, cars driving really fast or dudes riding bikes, but there's so much that goes into these things that it's kind of like they if you just go a little bit below the surface, they could be interesting to anyone. Because it's so fast, and the level at which, I know you're, of course, as we all should be, just an appreciator of standards of excellence and being at the top level of anything. And it doesn't get more top level than that,
Yeah.
And it's also here's one thing, like, all right, let me wrap a leadership lesson in here because this came to the top of the dome, but it is very, very applicable. We see the person, like the guy on the bike. I don't know who the current like top person in the Tour de France is, but whoever it used to be, we won't talk about Lance because that was something different, but or we see Max Verstappen or we see Lewis Hamilton. But what you find when you get these inside looks is that they truly are just one piece of a team of people that are at the very, very, very top of what they're doing. They do happen to be the person most front facing and the person that everyone sees, but it's far from them doing it on their own. And so, you mentioned Christian Horner last week, and of course, he's the guy that is at the top of Red Bull Racing that makes all the decisions. But I mean, there's the engineers are at the top of the field in the engineering. There's the trainers for the cyclist. There's the trainers for the F1 drivers. And the point being is that, kind of especially in the church, there's like the one guy that everybody sees, but the other people behind them really are what makes the operation go. And they also have to be at the very top of their field, or it's not going to, come out like it does. Go ahead.
You're I think the other, I mean, we're nerding out on this.
Yeah.
So we've lost half our audience at this point because they're like, oh, seriously, guys, enough on the F1. But the leadership lesson to me is also that not only does everybody have to be moving in sync, and you gotta work together to make the smallest improvements are actually the biggest wins. Meaning that the difference between winning and losing is 1/100th of a second, and so you're doing all this work around very small, minute changes that everybody is trying to figure out how do they get more speed. So it's not like you're able to look at how your strategy and go, well, if we do this, we know we're going to win. It's a very small window to be able to actually like go from Mercedes 7 years in a row. Now they're struggling to stay in second this year, and they can't keep up with Red Bull. So there's something to this that is, there's a lot of, like you said, that from top to bottom, everybody's got to be working together, moving in sync, making the right decisions, communicating well. It's like a little petri dish.
Yeah, like a microcosm of
exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, there's your leadership lesson from F1. That's gonna be a new segment here. We'll have to make up a jingle for it.
That's right.
But that's well, we have Cass Langton. I almost said Langston because that's naturally where I want to go with that last name. Yeah, Cass Langton, who, if you don't know that name, how about this? Global creative and worship pastor for Hillsong worldwide.
Yeah. That says it. That says it right there. That gets your attention right there.
Yeah. So we have her coming up in just a minute, and this is again one of those that you're not gonna want to miss. You're gonna want to have the moleskin out, and I feel like I'm always using or lately I've been using this as a teaser, but I'm trying to help you folks. I'm not trying to to pull a trick on you. You want to wait till the end of this conversation. Stay around to the end, because if you don't have goals for the second half of 2021, Cass is going to give you a bulleted list of, if you focus on these things for the second half of your year, it will be a win. I'll just say that. Because just a lot of wisdom throughout this entire conversation. But, yeah, Brad, you just asked her at the end kind of a message for leaders, and that's worth the price of admission alone.
Yeah, she dropped some gold. So stay tuned till the end of the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So before we get there, just real quick, Brad, do you have any kind of intentional or system or thinking about the fact that, here we are at the beginning of July, halfway through the year. And I feel like for me, every year, once I get to halfway through the year, I'm just like, I can't believe it's actually already been half a year. Yeah. But other than that, any kind of review process that's significant or special to being halfway through the year that you kind of go through?
Not really. I mean, I do tend to get a bit more intentional about looking at 2022 or the next year. So that's one thing that whether it's partnerships or whether it's work that's being done, whether it's thinking through even what is the next year going to look like? What are some goals related to next year? Some of that's intentional just from a vision and thinking about the future. Some of it's also intentional working with organizations who are already budgeting and thinking about next year, because if you're a pretty big organization, you're way out ahead, and you're now starting to budget, whether your fiscal year is, July to July, or it's, calendar year. There's a lot of organizations that they really start to think into the future once we hit, month 7. So that's one thing to think about as a leader is, do you have organizations you work with, or do you have donors, or do you have partners, or do you have, folks that you need to get, you need to get out in front where they are and not wait. Cause, sometimes you wait and then they say, well, sorry, you missed the window. So that's, I think that's important. The other thing is there's just a sense always of looking back and being grateful or starting to review what's happened so far this year. So you said it. I mean, you realize, oh man, I can't believe it's already July. Well, also, when you start thinking back to what's already been accomplished, what were the things you prayed for? What were the things you believed in? What were the things that you felt conviction around, or that you said, hey, I want to accomplish these things, and then start looking at that list and evaluating. So that's another thing I try to do, is just it comes out of a posture, again, of gratefulness. Mm-hmm. It doesn't come out of a posture of, I'm going to review and criticize and, feel like nothing was accomplished. It's much more, what did God do for the first 6 months that wasn't even expected? So that's another thing I think that's helpful for leaders, is just have a moment, even with your team, to stop and celebrate and look back and go, hey, look what we've accomplished. Look what God's done the first 6 months of this year.
Yeah. That's well said. And I think, and we're all somewhere on the journey, but I'm a big believer, and I think you are too, in sort of having a kind of a weekly review process, whether it be on Sunday or whatever, where you're kind of looking at how you're progressing in your goals or in organizational goals. So hopefully, this isn't the first time, and for all of us, I can say things in my personal life where this is absolutely true. So I'm not trying to Jesus juke here, but hopefully you're not at a place where you set goals at the beginning of the year and then halfway through the year is the first time that you're looking at them saying, well, did I do what I was supposed to do? Hopefully you're kind of doing that on a more frequent basis so that you know where the ship is heading. So, but we get so wrapped up in where the ship is heading that I just love the idea, like you're saying, of just like taking a pause more to just be grateful and to appreciate, the wins that you had, and to see, what God has accomplished through you, or, just what has happened in that first half of the year. And then just recognizing, specific pivots that you might want to kind of move towards. But just being grateful, that's very powerful. So good. Well, that's and you'll get some more tips for the second half of 2021 as we get into this conversation with Cass Langton. This was a powerful conversation. I mean, getting into whether you are a creative or whether you're somebody, well, of course we can get into we're all creatives, but whether you have a creative job title or you're somebody who's charged with leading creatives, either one of those, I think you'll learn a lot from this conversation. In fact, Cass addresses directly what it's like to lead creatives and specific things that you might want to pay attention to when doing that. And then just getting into the mind of a creative and learning some things to get your juices flowing, no matter what position that you're in. But this was a great, fun conversation. So here is Brad sitting down with Cass Langton.
I've found that many really creative teams, there is a, and I'm not going to name names, but we could share like who this would be, and everybody would know who they are. But let's just talk about Hillsong for a second.
Right.
The last minute, the 4 days before, the idea that gets birthed like 24 hours, or the day of. And then the ability to actually like pull it off.
Execute.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that
it's
to me
real
is,
space, right?
Yeah. That's the thing that is monumental, is because most teams are like, oh, well, we can't do that. Even if we have a good idea last minute, we won't give room for that to happen.
No. And we love the challenge of that, and we hate it. I think we love it when we pull it off. And then when we look back on it, we go, gee, that could have been better. And so there's constantly that creative tension of execution and how well you execute something and how well you could have. But it's risk-taking, right? And risk-taking breeds creativity.
Yeah. So what do you say to your team when they look at you and they're like, again, Cass, really? Like another 24-hour before pivot?
Yeah, I think the problem is in the moment they don't. In the minute, they're all like buzzing on it. Maybe except for our production and CT teams because they know what it takes to pull it off. But most of the guys, like that is their sweet space to operate in. And then we pay for it afterwards when we actually realize what we did. We're talking at the moment about overspeccing ideas because most of it, we deliver what we're not asked to deliver and we deliver better than we're asked to deliver. But the cost to the people personally is high. So then it becomes, well, you guys said we could do this and you're responsible for your own destinies and then you complain about it afterwards. So somewhere we've got to manage our own expectations of ourselves. And that is a hard conversation with creatives.
Yeah. By the way, paint the picture of, paint the picture. I mean, global worship and creative pastor, which that sounds really important, by the way.
Okay, right. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
It's not.
Well, but it is a global, I mean, Hillsong is a global, multi-country, lots of locations around the world. So paint the picture of what that looks like for you in terms of how many team members, scale,
post-COVID or pre-COVID?
Well, let's
because that is we're
let's
not sure yet.
Yeah. Or I would say probably pre-COVID at this point.
Okay. Pre-COVID, I think our team looked like something around 20,000 creatives globally. It looked like around 30 locations had churches in Australia plus around the same number globally. And then all of the extensions that come out of that. It is stage design teams, music teams, songwriters, worship leaders, creative technology guys. It is link operators and lighting operators and broadcast engineers and video editors and storytellers and dancers and makeup artists and costume designers and whatever you can imagine could fit into that creative space. Somehow I end up responsible for pastorally and output wise.
Yeah.
So and then obviously as a location, as a church, Hillsong is very empowering. And so we create canvases that people can paint on. So there is a lot of relational management and we do things together based on relationship. And then there's a few things that are, this is what Hillsong looks like at Vision Sunday or Easter or Christmas or those sort of things.
Plus
so we connect in a variety of ways.
Plus all this,
they're in there.
Yeah, the songwriters, the bands, the albums. Right. I mean, all of that is under your leadership.
It's fun, and we are working on different structural models as we grow to actually accommodate for those sort of things. So this year we have started up IO, which is our outward-facing creative endeavor.
Which means what?
Don't ask me too much about it. No, don't.
Yeah, that sounded very secretive. That sounded very like
keep it
under the radar.
No. Joel Houston is working with a guy called Dave Bageri, and they are reinventing that space. So
gotcha.
It's kind of like inside out. So taking what is inside of our church to the world.
Interesting.
Marketplace, secular. Yeah. So I don't know what it will be yet, but it is a work in process and an evolution, and real exciting.
And how many songs are you responsible for on all these albums over the last 20 years? I mean, most of them, right?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've written them all. No. But I definitely am probably the agitator behind them at the moment. Ben Fielding is sick of me calling him and going, "Have you got a new song? What can we do?" And we are working at the moment to create new spaces for creativity to come through. So putting lots of pressure on taking risk.
So
on the young guys, it's really fun.
Yeah, I mean,
going back to the grassroots of garages.
You have so many. Yeah. You have so many. I'm not going to say big personalities. That's the wrong way to say it. but you have so many talented people. Well, okay, you can say that, but you have so much talent.
Yeah, for sure.
The talent is unbelievable to then be a leader who they're willing to follow and to be comfortable enough and secure enough to actually like stand in front of all these amazing, talented people. Talk about the reality of that for you.
No, I think there's a real appreciation amongst our team on who brings what to the table and the diversity of that. And so I defer to those people in certain circumstances and they defer to me. And so together, that creates a pretty beautiful picture. I'm not a songwriter. I'm not a worship leader. I am not a video editor. Therefore, their skills are required in those spaces, but likewise, they're not pastorally responsible like I am for the people or the leadership of what we're doing. I don't find most of the time that that's an issue. Of course, we have moments of wrestle, but on the whole, they're incredible at, I think it's marriage, right? Mutual submission. So it's like, I don't know if that's a good answer, but it feels pretty organic on the ground and like there is a lot of buy-in, and together we're building something and we're well aware of what the end goal is and how we all play into that.
Yeah. Well, would you define yourself or would you describe yourself as a creative?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how would you define a creative, by the way? As the creative pastor, how do you define a creative person?
Okay. I actually think everybody is creative.
Me too.
It's just where their creativity lands. So I would say like we need creativity in every area of life, from medicine to engineering to like all of those places require creativity and thought and innovation and newness. So I would say that we say in our team, if you want to be creative, you can be creative. If you want to belong, you can belong. If like, just find what's in your hand and bring it to the table.
And that's a culture thing, right? I mean, within the Hillsong organizational framework, there is a culture that says not only is that expected, but it's embraced.
Yeah, I think we are very fortunate where we find ourselves because there is a great value on creativity. And I think that then breeds more and more creativity. There is space allocated for people to bring what they do into the church, but there's also a belief of people in the marketplace. So I think of the people who connect into our team who wouldn't necessarily serve on a Sunday, but they are artists and fashion designers and musicians whose work land in the public sector, but they are encouraged to do that and championed. So we would have artists who at the moment have exhibitions on in the middle of Sydney or the middle of LA who actually go, if I create beauty, I hope that somewhere people will see God in my work. They're evangelists. And that's fun.
Yeah. By the way, when I was leading Catalyst many years, we always loved Hillsong because there was a friendship there with people like yourself and many other folks.
Yeah.
We also loved watching you all create a standard of excellence that actually like we were proud of. And
I love that. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. The hard part for so many Christians, and this is not just church staff, it's not just people who are full-time, vocationally in ministry, but it's true for a lot of Christians in culture, is they sort of get to the place in life where they settle and that standard doesn't keep getting raised. And I just love to hear your perspective on that idea of setting a standard, because it seems like now every year, even conference-wise, I'm sure you guys are sitting around going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do this year? How are we going to raise the standard?
Do you know what? I think a long time ago, it's interesting you talk about this because I think we used to feel the pressure to do bigger and better. and one up ourselves. And that was definitely the conversation we had. How do we do it better, more excellently? And at one point in time, I think we sat around a table and went, if we live like this, we will kill ourselves. This is unhealthy. It's unhealthy that we see creativity as a competition, even if we're competing with ourselves. It's unhealthy from a storytelling point of view. It's unhealthy from a budgeting point of view, and it's unhealthy from a personal point of view. So then we started to have better conversations, which was, what story do we want to tell, and how do we tell it the best, even if it is simpler than what we've done before, but how do we maintain that excellence in everything we do? So for me, that became a much more exciting way to live, because then the end goal was the main aim.
Yeah. It's in it.
So,
there's,
and having said that, there are people in my world that I know set the standard and benchmark, and you want them involved in the process because they are rigorous in their due diligence and not allowing things to slip through. And so they are the guys that are responsible for the output and quality controlling and training up next generation of leaders to actually think about those sort of things.
Yeah, I would love to hear some of your practical ways that you and your team lead creatives, because that's a question that I'm sure you get all the time, which is, how do you actually create an environment where creatives want to show up, but then also they are empowered and allowed to do what they love to do, and especially if we're not wired that way. If a leader says, "Well, that's not me," then it's even harder sometimes. So, what are some of your insights?
Yeah, that clash I feel all the time of leaders who don't actually know how to manage creatives. Rich and I were talking about it this morning, my husband, and he said, it's been so interesting because over the years I've never thought there was a creative temperament. I'm like, no, you're lying. They're not. They're just people, and they're unique. But what I've realized is, as maybe A-type leaders interact with creatives, there is definitely a crushable personality and something that is way more fragile in creatives that I think allows them to create and actually tap emotion and communicate it. So I think one of the things that I have learned is that you have to actually start on a foundation of trust and build relationships with creatives that they know you've got their back and you know that there is some common understanding. I think lots of my role is actually to set some boundaries, manage expectations, help punch through walls and obstacles for people, and create places of honest dialogue, and then encourage them where they think things are impossible to actually find a way through. And then when they say, actually, this cannot be done, to listen and modify our expectations. I would say that as a team, we are trying to create some real clarity around the creative spaces. So I think borders actually create freedom for people. So a blank paper for anybody is quite threatening, but when they know what they have to put on the paper, it is easier. I have heard for years that we shouldn't foster collaboration in the creative space because when people are truly creative, they're allowed to be by themselves. But I think our greatest output has come when we put diverse teams around the table to actually flesh out ideas and sharpen each other and wrestle. I think our best songs are now written as co-writes. I think we have had to create places where we're prepared to take risk and we're prepared to laugh when things go wrong. And we celebrate failure and we celebrate success and we celebrate the person before the gift. So I think when we all celebrate the output more than the person, we start to get things out of whack and we allow people to believe things that aren't quite true. And then I think part of creating a creative space is you actually have to use the ideas that come. So I've watched lots of creators get frustrated as they keep bringing ideas to the table and people say, I love it, but do you think we could? Can we modify? Can we tweak? Can you go back to the drawing board on that? And that happens everything from production specs to songs. And sometimes I think we just have to create place to use even what's not ready in order to generate what's to come.
How do you hold a creative leader accountable? I mean, sometimes confrontation is hard, right? I
hate confrontation. Look, I think I was really idealistic about this stuff when I started in my job. So I was
Right.
like, okay, here's what we're going to do to hold these people accountable. We're going to have weekly meetings and you're going to do this and we're going to do times in the office. And like, I was so idealistic. I can put out in front of Ben Fielding, I need 10 songs a year and I need this and I need like those sort of things. And I think as time has gone on and as we have developed trust in our team, maybe the measures are really different to what they used to be.
Huh.
And the accountability is different to what it used to be. But people, we continue to clarify what is expected of people, and we manage by big outcomes rather than the day-to-days.
And don't you find that the pressure, and a good pressure, a good tension of, hey, like this is us, this is Hillsong. There's a standard here. Like we do things this way, that holds people when they get in the system, they look around and go, man, I don't want to screw up. I don't ever want somebody to have to hold me accountable.
Okay. We laugh when we talk to other teams because I'm like, I don't normally have to get up and say to people, this is Hillsong and we have a standard. What actually happens is somebody turns up late for rehearsal and the whole band looks at that person and goes, seriously, mate, are you here late? What are you doing here late? We've all been like, there is a collective culture that then perpetuates that. And it would be the same with guys bringing ideas and things to the table. There is a base level of what they're prepared to present. And often when the team come in, they'll go, I just want to clarify before I present this. And you're like, okay, guys, I already know it's not finished. It's not where you want it to be. It's going to be 100 times better. But this is the starting point. And I think in our culture, there is very much that kind of level. And for us, it means that we've actually had to create spaces that aren't that polished and aren't that amazing in order that there might be authenticity, real, new, fresh, because some of that excellence breeds an inability to take a risk. And we do what is familiar rather than what is now or current.
When are you going to write a book, by the way? I need a book from Cass Langton.
Look.
I need a book. I need a book on leading creatives.
Okay. All right. You ask Brian and I'll write a book.
Okay. You heard it here on this podcast. Yeah.
I don't know that that's true.
There are outlets to learn from you and Rich, the Hillsong Creative Podcast. Is that?
Yeah, that is true.
I'm a faithful listener to this podcast. It's really good.
That has been a fun one. Like during COVID, we had to pivot pretty hard, and the podcast was maybe every 2 weeks, and we went to a micropod every day for 10 minutes.
Right.
Because we found our team were falling apart at the seams, and everybody had lost their jobs, and like the reality of the world just turned upside down. It nearly killed us. So that podcast has now gone back to a weekly thing, and we're doing team talks and a range of things on it, but it is fun. The thing that I'm most looking forward to is our worship conference. That's my favorite thing we do every year, which is a creative and worship conference in November, maybe October this year. But it is online and in the room, and it is always our funnest place to be.
And anybody can watch or tune in online. I mean, they can register and be part of it. Yeah.
That is true. And like in the past, we have done like live workshops where we've got guys from LA asking questions to our songwriters in Sydney, and they're like interacting with an online world and the local world. It's real fun. It's like 150 masterclasses and all kinds of creative sessions, and artists still live here, and it's wild and beautiful and intimate and crazy.
By the way, is there somebody like who has your job? I was trying to think, is there a similar person in a church that has your job? I don't think there is globally. I don't know of anybody.
It has my job.
Yeah, that like has the role you have at the level you have. I was just trying to figure out like who's the benchmark for you when it comes to like the role you have. And
I've got a network of like I would talk to Wade at Elevation and John and Steph Cassetto at Saddleback, and like there is a range of people like that who we would ring and have conversations around this sort of thing, try to connect.
Sure. But the global reach is the part that is so unique for your.
It's pretty interesting.
For your role.
It makes it so fun because you're talking cultures and languages, and it makes leading a creative team amazing. Like over Easter, our Swedish team hired out this big old ancient cathedral in the middle of Stockholm, and they did the most beautiful worship experience. And it's things that, like, we would never have access to venues like that in Sydney, given that we're 200 years old. But you watch the creativity that stirs in the team, and it's quite breathtaking. So working out how to harness that globally and what to do with it is quite fun. At the moment, our Spanish world is exploding. And so it's like, okay, how do we pull that into the inner workings of this thing? What should we do? Yeah.
I'd love to know too from what are your outlets for learning? Like, who are you watching? What do you listen to? Maybe even, your books, your go-to books or websites, anything top of mind?
Yeah. Do you know, I think I've learned over the years to play to my strength when it comes to this one. I don't know if you've ever done that Gallup Strength Finders.
Yes.
But my top strengths are like input, ideation, includer, like some of those things. And so my natural go-to is, the guys laughed at me. They said your input finds its output in stories and people, and your includer just loves people and just like more. So I think I'm always listening to what people I respect are reading and listening to. My iPhone notes are full of books that I should read, things that I should click on, new Netflix series, documentaries, those sort of things. But most of it comes from talking. Like over the last 18 months, I think I've done more listening than I've ever done in my life. And I have sat with, in Australia, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders going, tell me your stories, tell me what I should be reading, tell me how to get an understanding of this, show me barriers to entry, like help me to develop creativity that reflects our nation. Like, so I think those sort of things. I'm a junkie for theology. So anything out of Regent College in Vancouver or those sort of places, like I'm there because I just see the links and connections between everything. I loved things like the basics, Creativity Inc., Phosphorescence, like all of those sort of books that have been quite now. Bob Iger's book. I think I spent a lot of time on 99U and looking at creative ways of leading people. I have the most diverse reading list probably in the world, and I am constantly like Harvard Business Review articles, just random things. My Pinterest board explodes. We have our network passes around podcasts, articles, things that they're listening to. So I feel like it's rich in terms of that stuff, but I don't know that I have specific go-tos. I'm a gatherer.
I just want that list, though. I just want that list. That's what I want. I want the full list.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah.
I'll actually send it to you if you want me to.
I would love to see that.
Yeah. My phone grows with all the things. Like the Pope's letters to creatives. Do you know those random things that just come in? And I've just got a resource file of everything and everything. Stuff about imagination, things about the things that spark that probably to nobody else look creative, but to me, I actually go, oh, wow, that's going to become the best thing we've ever seen before.
And do you capture stuff in your phone, like on your notes app? Like when you have a thought or something stirs creatively? Yeah. Is that your go-to?
Yeah, always. Yes. Yep. And I have a pencil and good notes on my iPad, and I draw all the time. So my way of capturing is flowcharting, like mind maps. It's the way I speak. It's the way I preach. It's the way I process ideas. So there are boxes and drawings and arrows between everything all the time. And in meetings, I sit there and go, guys, anybody got a piece of paper and a pen? And I'll draw rather than talk.
And when you say draw, are you sketching? Is that what you're doing?
Generally, it's boxes that connect to things with random dots and this goes here and that goes here and it looks a little bit like this. But I would draw in my free time if I was allowed to, or paint.
Interesting. And do you have a when you think about like the most creative conference experience, concert, I mean, what for you is like the thing you've seen in the last year or two that you were just like, oh my gosh, that absolutely blew me away, or it inspired you in such a way that it just, it was at the top of the list?
Yeah, it's so predictable. Can it be a really predictable one?
Sure.
Hamilton. It frustrates everything in me, and I feel so envious of the way they tell stories differently and the power of it, I think.
Yeah.
But I feel like during COVID, right, we've all been locked down. There are no concerts, there's no
Right.
But we keep passing things around. So just like that, we've got like lists of things that people have done, random things, interactive LED screens and Coldplay on the roof in Jordan, and cameras from the NASA spaceships that show multiple locations of looking at things that then spark, okay, could people sit in different places in online church and get different experiences? Could they stand where the worship leader stands? So I feel like my notes are constantly like that. You would look at them and laugh and go, I don't know how they all go together or what these would do.
Oh, I'm the same way though.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I don't draw. I don't create like mind mapping, but it's still the same process of sort of input from everywhere and then making sense of that. Yeah.
My team is so used to getting random images or articles and just going, okay, where are we going? Can't wait to talk about this.
Is there a person who you would describe as the most creative person in the world? Like that you see, you put them on such a pedestal in the way they approach things or the creativity they have. I mean, a producer, an artist, you're shaking your head no.
I am shaking my head. Not one.
Yeah.
I feel like there are people I appreciate maybe. But look, to be honest, when it comes to this stuff and in the church, I keep going to the guys, let's not copy. Let's be inspired by.
Yeah, it's good.
But let's actually, which is really hard in the creative space, not to just take ideas and rip them off. And I think we've done that before. And now it's like, guys, it's just, our story is so unique and what we're trying to tell is so unique. Let's find better ways, better pathways. I keep going, parables have to be our new normal, where we just take different stories to tell an ultimate truth.
Yeah, I like that. I like hearing you say that because one, it's counterintuitive, but two, it's also goes back to the premise that we do have the greatest story ever told that we're telling.
Yeah. So much, right? And when you read the book, it is better and richer and deeper than anybody ever tells you. And the minute you start studying, you go, there is more here than I can actually probably spend my lifetime telling. So I don't know. I keep going, scripture is so complex and so ancient that we shouldn't dumb it down or over modernize it. And so how do you wrestle with that to actually communicate in a way that's beautiful?
Yeah. I've got to ask you this too, because I would argue there are three bands in my lifetime that have created such an epic experience for me,
right?
That I would put them at the top of my list of like monumental memory moments. Oh yeah, I'd love for you to try to pick the three that you think
good.
That you think are on that list.
Is one U2?
Yes.
Is one Coldplay?
Yes. you got two out of the three. Right.
Oh, the third one. Is the third one? Oh, no, I can't pick the third one.
The third one is Hillsong United. I'm not kidding.
I should have got that one.
No,
yeah, right.
I mean, arguably there is such an epic anthem, singing the lyrics at the top of your lungs.
Oh yeah.
In all three of those. And
Yes.
from your vantage point, you lead those teams. That's something that you look at and you're stewarding. I mean, why is that true for me? When I look at those three bands and say, yep, all epic experiences.
Because they're all led by the same person. Maybe Bono is Chris Martin, is Joel Houston.
Interesting.
I don't actually know, but I do know that working with Joel, he is a master at curating experiences for people in order that they see something beyond the natural. And so he is so hands-on in the process and so committed to you as the person who comes and your connection to God that it's quite breathtaking. Like, it's amazing.
Wow, that's insight. I'd never thought of it that way. Yeah.
So I watched their last tour, and there was, I don't know if I'm allowed to tell stories, but there was a moment most nights where Joel would literally walk a catwalk and pick somebody in the crowd. And he tells a story about one night he was walking down the catwalk and he sees these two girls, and he kind of stops and jokes and tries to take their mobile phone from them. And as they're doing it, there's a guy behind who looks so angry. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to stop there, keeps walking. And then as he comes back, after he's done his B stage moment and stuff, he bends down, or the guy grabs him and pulls him off the stage and just starts sobbing. And he said to him, I just wanted to say thank you. He said, they were meant to be here. They were meant to be here. And then he tells Joel, in the middle of a concert, everything's going on. Jad's still singing up on the stage. Taya's going on. This guy actually tells about how he's there with his daughter. And not so long ago, his wife and son were actually killed in a tragic accident. And he had tickets for them all to be at the United concert together, but his wife and son hadn't made it. And I'm like, those moments, Joel prayed with him and was with him. And I go, I don't know many artists who would be prepared to get off a stage in the middle of a concert that they're actually responsible for executing to minister in a moment. And I love that about all those United guys, is that they don't think they're anything special. I work with most of them day by day. They're in the ditches with people. They're pastoring. They're leading. They're having coffees. You probably think they're in an office writing songs all the time. They're just not. And I think it's unique and beautiful.
Wow. By the way, I want to affirm that and also say that about everybody at Hillsong, including Brian and Bobby all the way down. Anybody I've ever met, there was just such a spirit of humility and of we're in this together, and of an appropriate level of both. We really love what we do and we're good at what we do, but we also know there's a bigger story, and that's just such a powerful thing. I mean, I think that's so much of the reason, again, epic experiences, and that God has blessed the work, right?
I think if you often talk to people, they don't think they're that good and they're in their positions because they're the last men standing. Like, often we'll all joke going, everybody else who had real talent, they've left us, and it's us, and somehow God chooses to breathe on it and use it. And so therefore there is a real humility going, most of the time we don't know what we're doing, but we get there. And we stand back and go, check out what God did.
Yeah.
And he connects the dots. Like, we are constantly telling stories in our community of God at work. And in our creative realm, like, there are so many moments where we've gone, we're just not that good. Like, we didn't think of that moment. God must have thought of that moment. And in executing it, he used it. So I think of a moment where one of our creative producers goes, in our opening, I want leaves to fall from the ceiling. I want, like, there's this moment where we're in the garden and the father is dancing with this girl and there's a waterfall. Like, there's all this stuff going on, and leaves should just, like, beautifully fall from the ceiling. So we go, all right, no problem. Like, literally, we're cutting out the leaves in our offices. We're fire retarding it. It's not like you think Hillsong, and I think somebody else should be doing that, and then I laugh because we're doing it. And then there are people who are putting the leaves down from the ceiling, and there is a girl sitting up the back, and the leaf falls on her lap, and she starts crying. And afterwards, she goes and finds a pastor, and she said, I just need to tell you that tonight I gave my heart to Jesus. And do you know why I gave my heart to Jesus? Because the leaf fell.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm so sorry, I don't understand. She tells this bizarre story about how she had a dream and God was in her dream and there were leaves falling all around her in that moment. And she said, the moment the leaves began to fall, I realized I was in a place where God was. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And so then our guys keep going, wow, God uses creativity to tell his story.
That's amazing.
And it's fun. Yeah, it's real fun.
I love that. Wow.
I do too.
I'm going to give you the last word. So you got a lot of leaders listening. What's your encouragement to them? What do you want to say to them?
Yeah, I think for me, these last 18 months have been really sifting and sorting. I think I've spent a lot of time working out what matters most and trying to live in a way that is pleasing to Jesus. And so whenever I look at him, he is more unexpected than I imagine, and he is constantly challenging and countercultural. And his interactions with people are like inclusive, but at the same time, they're confronting, and he sees potential and he speaks to it. But he's like relentless in his commitment to the kingdom come, and he's steadfast on what he's there for, but deliberately interruptible. And as I've watched him, I'm like, okay, so what personally do I need to do in this season? I think my encouragement to leaders would be, these are the things that I have resolved that I will be committed to in this season, and maybe they might encourage others. I think I have been thinking lots in this season about hearing people, like truly listening to where they are on the ground. Like, what is the temperature like? I think it matters when it comes to diversity and inclusion in race, in gender, in age, in demographic, in millennials versus boomers, in like that whole where we find ourselves. We're in a transition. And I think we have to listen to what's happening on the ground, but then keep lifting people higher. Keep calling them back to a solidarity and a togetherness. I am committed as a leader to demonstrating integrity by continuing to build transparency and trust within my team, but also the people who interact with me and have anything to do with me. My hope is that that would be what people would see of leadership and not feel like there's always something to hide. I am committed with my team to innovating the right things, not the wrong things, and working out what that is. I think in an age of deconstruction and relooking at faith, we've got to actually maintain a biblical worldview in a real changing cultural moment and not throw the baby out with the bathwater. But at the same time, not be afraid to go, the method of preaching the message isn't working for us. So let's work out how to tell this more beautifully, more holistically. One thing I'm committed to doing in this season is inviting more people to the table. And when I invite them to the table, asking them what it is that they contribute uniquely in this season and what's the best part of what they bring. We have a really beautiful, diverse team. And one of my greatest leaders is a guy from Kenya. And he keeps going, we have to be equal at the foot of the cross, but you need to let me bring what I bring. And he keeps going, when I grew up in Kenya, I grew up with respect for elders and this village mindset and ability to communicate like none of you can do. And I'm like, well, Mush, teach us to do that. And I'll teach you how to be a laid back Aussie. Like, let's actually bring the strengths of our communities. My Asian team members come and they go, we are harmonious. And we want that in this team. And I'm like, this is beautiful. If we could all work out what the strengths are we bring and ask each other, then leave our weaknesses at the door, maybe we become more like the community Christ saw. I think my other one is I need to fight for optimism and joy, actually choose joy daily. And with that, practice gratitude. So keep saying thank you to people for being willing to lay down their lives for the gospel, to serve, to bring their creativity, for the little things and for the big things. I have learned that I need to develop truth tellers around me who show me areas that I might be blind to. So actually allow people to speak to my blind spots. And I think that for leaders is a difficult thing because we don't like to acknowledge where we're vulnerable, but I want to change and become better. And then my last thing is that I have to remind myself that success is seen in faithfulness, not in outcomes. And so it matters that my marriage, my children, my team and my church is actually faithful to Jesus before they're celebrating all the things that we've done so well for the kingdom.
Hello.
That would be what I think.
Hello. That's a master class right there.
So, well, that's what I've got.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Cass, for being with us. If you want to keep up with Cass, you can find her on Instagram at Cass Langton. And again, no S there, not Langston, Langton. CASSLANGTON. On Twitter, she's actually at Cassandra Langton. So you can find her there. And you can also listen to the Hillsong Creative podcast if you'd like to.
Yeah, her and Rich. Rich is really the host. I mean, he's Cass makes some appearances, but Rich is really the one week in, week out being on the podcast.
Yeah. So that's another place to just kind of get inside the mind of, I think what for years and years and years, and this was part of y'all's conversation, has kind of been the beacon that people have looked to in the church for creative inspiration.
Exactly.
And hopefully, this was even part of y'all's conversation. And I love this because I think it's something that we're always battling within ourselves. Hopefully it's to get inspiration and not to just say like, hey, what did they do? Let's repeat that exactly. Because there's a difference between those two things. And you can interpret something or use it as inspiration, and it's still very much of a creative process, but just doing what somebody else does is not necessarily creativity. So, I thought that, it's very interesting. And when thinking about leading creatives, this is always the tension. And I know, thinking back to the days with Catalyst, like swinging on both sides of this equation, where you find yourself in this position to where in order for the best creative ideas to come forth, there has to be kind of freedom. There can't be like very rigid rules and boundaries. But without some type of rules and boundaries, then the people that are involved suffer from the process. And it becomes challenging to be able to pull something off. And I just, it's interesting to me. I guess my whole point in saying all that is it's interesting to me that even somebody at the level of Hillsong Global, this is something that they're still dealing with on an ongoing basis of how do you sort of kind of define the limits of creativity, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I don't know if I have a response. I think what you're saying is accurate, and there's freedom when there's boundaries. At the same time, there's, as she said, you have to be okay with not, with sort of changing what success is, how you measure success. And if you're always just trying to one up yourself, that's a tough battle to fight on an ongoing basis. So that's the challenge of any creative, or ideator or somebody who innovates or thinks outside the box is, well, do you have to come up with something new to wow people? And it's not a moving target, but it really is. And balancing that is important, because otherwise you'll just wear yourself out trying to do something that outdoes the last time.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I love it. What sounds like a simple question, but is very deep and layered and nuanced is, what story do we want to tell and how do we tell it best? I think starting with that, instead of kind of holding up, all right, here's what we did last time, now go. How do we outdo that? It's more about telling the story. I love just I also just kind of wanted to hit on real quick. And she specifically said, with type A leaders leading creative personalities, just some of the tips that she kind of gave with that. And I love this idea of that it's kind of your job to make them believe that anything is possible. And I love it so much, probably because I can just remember this tension from Catalyst creative opportunities. So when something sounds outlandish, it's kind of your job to actually provide an environment or an atmosphere where it can be done and see where it goes. And then there are times where you hit an ultimate wall, like for whatever, if it's budgeting or if it's, just literally physically can't be done, an idea can't be pulled off. And if something gets to that, then you listen and you take the feedback from the creative team and modify your expectations, so that the idea that actually can't be or that can be pulled off still feels like something that is exciting and that is a win, because it's actually the process of getting there that makes even that idea possible, I guess is the way to say it. I just love that idea of not feeling like defeated because we couldn't pull off the impossible, in modifying those expectations. Very, very important to the creative process.
Stuff.
So, I think she said it best for the challenge this week, and it's a big challenge, but I would just say go back and listen to the last few minutes of the conversation and just some of the things that Cass said that she's thinking about for the end of this year. If you want something a little bit more tangible, then put yourself through a mid-year review. I think that you can do that quickly, but just think about some of these questions that she's asking herself or that she's really focusing on this year. How am I as a listener? Am I truly listening to others? How am I paying attention to where, as we all, speaking specifically to church leaders, as we all kind of try to navigate the world that we live in, what are the tangibles and what are the intangibles? And, are we making sure that we're not starting to kind of try to mold the intangibles, but that we're working around those things? And, are we settled enough in our foundation that our success comes in our faithfulness to the cause? Yes, it's very important to look at outcomes, to measure outcomes, but they don't define success. That if we're being faithful to what we've been called to do, then we are successful in our faithfulness. I believe our old friend Charles Stanley said, be obedient and leave the consequences up to him.
Yeah.
He said that a few times. So that's always something that's good to remember. So, happy mid-year, Brad, and happy birthday, America, and happy middle of the summer too, to everyone out there. I can't believe we're already in the middle of the summer, but I hope everyone is enjoying summertime. Hopefully you're getting some time, maybe for the first time in a year, to get away, get to a beach, get someplace like that, rest up, and get ready for the fall and the second